Hey, it's Benjie Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of the syndicated talk show, People of Distinction. The talk that gives you an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, alcoleenterprises.com for more info. Email me directly through Benjie at alcoleenterprises.com if you'd like to get involved with what we have going. And as always, please continue to like and follow our broadcasts. People of Distinction is an internationally syndicated show solely due to the love and support that you all continue to show. We're available across all major podcast distributors, and like I mentioned, people, if you keep following, we're going to continue to put out the content. Now sit back and strap in because we are delighted to showcase this next guest on our network. And on the line with us today, we have the impressive Joyce Dixson Haskett. Now we're going to be discussing Joyce's amazing book, L.O.R.T.E, Levels of Response to Traumatic Events, a vital aid in serving children of incarcerated parents. People, right there in the title, you got an idea of the discussion at hand, man, but please believe me, an idea is all you got. This book is remarkably powerful. It's Amazon, it's Barnes & Noble, it's a lot of other places. While you're at it, be on the lookout. Because see, Joyce is working on a memoir, and once we start to go into a discussion of her backstory, you're gonna realize that that memoir is one you need to add to your shelf as well. It's not available for purchase just yet, still in creation, but you're gonna wanna check back into her Amazon and Barnes & Noble pages frequently to get it the moment it does become available. Well, I'll tell you what is available at this moment is her personal website. That's called daylilyhealth.org. Now, understand when you head on over to that site, the book and future books aren't available through it. But trust me when I tell you, people, it is a phenomenal resource that you're gonna wanna utilize. Again, once we begin our discussion, you're gonna see why this is something you really wanna take advantage of. Once more, that's daylilyhealth.org. And I quickly wanna take this opportunity and point out the fact that she was brought to us by worldwide Publicists. So if you're a writer out there who has gone through their process and now you need help moving the masterpiece you just developed, well, look no further than Worldwide Publicists, people, because this is exactly what they specialize in. Now you're gonna wanna head on over to worldwidepublicists.com and gather all the ways that their fantastic team is gonna help you do just that. People, I have a question for you, man. How does a mother survive the guilt of incarceration? And a mother, a father, or just a parent survive the guilt of incarceration? Now, of course, we're talking about her, so we're gonna pose it that way. But that guilt, not only for herself, but primarily the guilt for leaving her children behind. That is a difficult question to ponder. As a parent myself, I couldn't even fathom leaving my children for more than a day. Man, it is something difficult. Well, Joyce Dixson Haskett, see, her life changed forever the day that she was convicted. But her deepest pain wasn't the prison sentence itself. It was the fear for her children, lost in a system unprepared to help them. In her book, she transforms her anguish into a lifeline, offering families and professionals the tools to help these vulnerable children not just survive, but thrive. Please believe it, man, this book, it isn't just a guide. It is a roadmap to resilience, proving that even in the darkest circumstances, hope can be rebuilt. Today, Joyce shares her journey, her wisdom, and her unshakable belief that every child of an incarcerated parent can bounce back stronger. Sit back, strap in, and be ready, man, because this is a powerful book, and her words are going to carry so much weight. Let's get it going. Joyce, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Such an honor.
Joyce, the honor is all ours. I really do mean that. You are the truest embodiment of a person of distinction, and it is an honor to have you here with us. Your book is incredible, insightful. It is truly awe-inspiring. I really do mean that. You are someone that we are delighted to have here with us. And we can't wait to learn more about you and learn more about this amazing book. So let's start off, okay, at the ground floor, at your foundation. Tell us not only more about yourself, but how we got here to your book, L.O.R.T.E.
I was trafficked at a pretty early age, and the time I was trafficked, I had two small boys. They were 6 and 8 years old. I had a very, very tumultuous childhood, a lot of rape and abuse. And I met this guy, and I thought that everything was going to be okay in my life because he promised me that he would, and told me I was beautiful, and he wanted to, in essence, make all my dreams come true because I had been struggling. And I believed him, and I believed him because I needed to. I wanted to. And it was wonderful for the first month or two. He courted my mother and grandmother and took them liquor and money. They loved him. And all of a sudden, one day, I found myself getting up off the floor for saying, I thought. And he said to me, B, you do not think. I think for you. I didn't know what was happening to me. I didn't know what was going on. And so he was grooming me. The next thing I knew, appointments were being made for me at hotels. I had been very promiscuous as growing up and as a teenager. However, it was my choice. Here I didn't have a choice. And I remember the first time he sent me out, sent me to the hotel, and I didn't know what to expect. I thought, okay, well, since I have to do this, and this was a man who would literally leave footprints in your chest. And so I thought, if I have to do this, then I'm going to go in, and this is what was in my mind. I'm going to go in, and this is what you do. You tell them who you are, and you have sex, and they pay you, and you leave, and if everything goes okay, and maybe you can do it again sometime. It was not that way. You never know who is going to be on the other side of those doors. And so when I walked in, 3 men were waiting for me. 3. And they had already decided what they were going to do to me. And it was the most horrible thing. All 3 men, at the same time, I remembered laying there and feeling my flesh tear. And I remembered crying, and I remembered praying, God, please help me. And then I thought, why in the world would God want to help you, you nasty thing? And so you do what you do, and you get up after it's over. If you can, you go and clean yourself up and get ready for the next time. Sometimes 5, 10, 15 times a night. And, what if I had been 15 or 8 or 6? Because it happens to them too. And so my children were with my mother and grandmother. And people think that human trafficking is about sex. It's not. It's about money and power and control and manipulation. And I was the entertainment at a party. And they stripped me naked, put me in a bed, and started to beat me with pool sticks. And the wager was how many licks I could take before I went down. And so they beat me and they beat me and they beat me. And finally the guy broke the stick over my head. I thought it was over. He called for another stick and started to beat me with that one. Well, finally I went down. And I heard one of the men say, "You're going to have to kill her. You cannot take her to the hospital. They will ask too many questions." And so I remember praying again. "Lord, please don't let someone read to my children that they found their mother naked, face down, dead in a ditch." And then I heard some guy said, "We can't kill her." So they wrapped me up in a sheet like a mummy, put me in the back seat of a car and drove me to a hospital, threw me on the back dock like a bag of garbage, but I was alive. And I think I was out there for a couple of hours. A maintenance man found me, took me into the hospital. They asked me one time what happened to me. And when I didn't tell, nobody asked again. So I was in that hospital for 13 days. And when it was time for me to leave, guess who they released me to? And so I was standing there thinking that either he was going to kill me or somebody in the streets was going to kill me. And unfortunately, it was very, very easy to find a gun in the streets. And so I felt my only alternative was to kill him first. And I had never purposed in my heart to hurt anybody ever. And so I thought about my kids. I thought about the possibility of going to prison. But most importantly, I wanted to live. And I did. I went and got myself a gun. I hid it in an upstairs bathroom that he didn't use. Waited for my opportunity, came downstairs, and shot him dead. And I thought something was wrong with me because I didn't panic. I didn't go to pieces. I just felt safe. So I found a way to get out of there and fled the city, was gone for a couple of weeks, came home, and turned myself in. I think the hardest memory, the worst part was watching my two boys stand at the door, tell me goodbye. They didn't know what was going on. We thought they didn't know what was going on. And I looked at them and I didn't know when I was going to see them again. And so I went to jail. But I tell you, that first night that I went to jail, something's got to be really wrong with this on so many levels. But the first night I went to jail, it was the best sleep I had had, and I don't know when.
Wow.
So I stayed in jail, didn't know anything about the law. It was an election year. The attorney convinced me to have a bench trial, which was crazy. No jury. I was on trial for my life. I trusted him. Bad decision. My trial lasted about a day and a half. And when it was over, the judge found me guilty of murder in the first degree and sentenced me to spend the rest of my natural life in prison. And I really felt conflicted because I wasn't a bad person, but at the same time, I did commit the murder because I thought about it. But I thought about it because I wanted to live. And so I went to prison. And I had no idea of how much my children were going to suffer right along with me. They were ostracized from the community they grew up with. Kids they played with all their lives, they were no longer welcome in their homes. They struggled in school. My 8-year-old fought every single day. He fought. He fought. My youngest son, the way he dealt with it was he detached himself from people who could hurt him or leave him. And he spent a lot of time by himself, doing his schoolwork and stuff like that. But his brother fought every single day. Kids would say things to my sons like, you know, your mother's a murderer, your mother's a killer, your mother's in prison, she's never going to get out, and she's this and she's that. These are not things that these children read about in a newspaper. This is what they were being taught in the home. This is what they heard at the dinner table or whatever, and they took it back to school, and they hurt my children. And my oldest grew up very, very angry. Very angry. My youngest grew up, and the interesting thing is, my younger son was able to get a mentor. And the irony is the mentor was a police officer. He took my younger son under his wing and he helped him incredibly. But my oldest son, he was just out there with all this anger, with all his rage, with his hurt, his feelings of abandonment, so confused, the ambiguity they endured. People actually told my children that they should treat me as if I were dead because I was never coming out of prison, and it would be easier for them if they just treated me as if they just thought of me as if I was dead. But they knew I wasn't dead because they would visit me. But then they also knew or believed that I would never come home. And so finally, I worked in prison. I worked hard, and I decided that I was going to learn everything I could about how to help women in prison and their children. So I started the work behind bars. And I went to school, and I was able to become one of the lead paralegals in the prison, and fortunately was chosen as one of 3 women to take part in the University of Michigan program. And after 17 years, 120 days, a jailhouse lawyer found an issue in my case. And I went back for an evidentiary hearing. But they canceled it and said that instead of coming back for an evidentiary hearing, I would be coming back on a motion for a new trial. And when I got back to trial, every University of Michigan professor I had was in the courtroom, every teaching assistant, and you know how hard it is to get a TA anywhere they're supposed to be. And one of the deans of the School of Social Work in Ann Arbor was there and said, if this woman walks out of your courtroom, we'll have her in the master's program in 6 weeks on campus in Ann Arbor. And it was incredible. People I had fought with in the Department of Corrections for years, they called the judge to say, if you want this woman to walk out of your courtroom, this is the language that you use. And it was absolutely incredible. And all I remembered hearing that judge say was, Joyce, have a good life. And I walked out of that courtroom that day. I had been gone so long, I got on an elevator. The elevator said, you're now approaching the 3rd floor. I'm looking around like, where'd that come from? I was gone a long time. I hadn't seen a dog in like 11 or 12 years. I got to see a dog on a hospital run once. And I went straight into the School of Social Work. Got my master's degree in social work. Started working with clients and patients, and I eventually got my own practice. I went into private practice, and I'm doing that today. So God has blessed me. However, the most difficult part was coming out of prison, because when I came out of prison, I found out that my oldest son was in prison. And I had to leave one prison to go to another prison to see my son. I mean, it was heartbreaking. And I got to the prison and went to see him. He said it was hardest in school. He said that there were counselors in school for kids who had alcohol and drug problems. There were counselors for kids whose parents were abusing them for domestic violence, all these kinds of things. He said, Mama, but there was nobody for us. Nobody. And so I ended up tracking down some of the old teachers. And I finally got one, and she said to me that, she said, we knew what was going on, but we didn't want to embarrass them. Embarrass them? This boy's fighting every single day, and nobody would talk to him or find out, trying to find out what was really going on because somebody was afraid they might embarrass him. I was just so angry. So angry. And so I went to work at an agency for young people, and what I found was that, and some of these children, some of the young people who were a part of this agency had parents or siblings who had been incarcerated, and they were different from the group who didn't have parents who were in prison. They seemed to have taken on more responsibility. Some were more angry. And only after really digging into their lives, did I find out that their parents were in prison. And I remember going to the court to offer the program, and someone over there said, okay, Joyce, you can go to detention. There are 23 kids over there. Only maybe one or two would meet the criteria for your program, which simply was they had to have had one or both parents incarcerated currently or at some point in their lives. And so I went over there and I talked to those kids just like I'm talking to you. When I got done, 18 of the 23 kids had had one or both parents who had been incarcerated, and nobody knew it. And so that prompted me to write this little book. And I think it's a powerful little book because people don't really understand what these children go through. And when I got into Michigan, I must say, when I got into the university, I said, okay, I'm going to go to school and I'm going to learn about women in prison. I'm going to learn about children of prisoners. I didn't learn any of that because particularly children of prisoners, they were not a high priority. Not at all. And neither were women in prison, to tell the truth. But I did learn what I needed to learn. I learned about theory, and I learned how to write. And so I thought about what my children went through. I thought about other stages that children had gone through, and why some kids turned out. Their situations were worse than other kids who went through the same situation. And I use my own two children as an example. My two sons, same mother, obviously, grew up in the same house with my mother and my grandmother, went to the same school, same community, same everything, except my youngest son ended up in college and my oldest son ended up in prison. And I really needed to understand those dynamics and why things were so different. And thus, L.O.R.T.E was born. And so I didn't want parents or grandparents, particularly grandparents or professionals like the ones in the schools who really didn't know what to do with the kids or what to say or how to approach the issue. I wanted to provide some guide where people wouldn't feel like they were lost. And I don't know what's worse. Yes, I do. It's bad enough. It's bad enough that children have to suffer the loss of a parent to incarceration, especially if it's a mom or the primary caregiver. But the real travesty is leaving the child to have to try and figure out on their own what happened. Why is nobody giving me any information? How do I get through this? Why do I feel so abandoned? Why do I feel so alone? What am I supposed to do? I want to be nice. I want to be good, but people just won't let me. They're making me feel bad about me, and they treated my children as if they committed the crime. And I think a lot of children suffer those same situations, and the stigma of the parents' prison, it just follows them. And they treat them as if they committed the crime. So if you've got a group of kids in a house and say, one of my kids was there, and something comes up missing, which kid do you think they're going to look at first? Mm-hmm. Who's going to be the most suspicious? So there are some things that you will not be able to protect them from, but you can prepare them for resiliency. You can tell them the truth so they don't feel abandoned or unimportant. My grandmother used to say, all shut eyes ain't sleeping, all goodbyes ain't gone. And so kids hear stuff that you don't think they hear, and they see stuff you don't believe they saw. Mm-hmm. Some of that stuff you wish they didn't see it, but they did. Yeah. So they needed answers. They needed a way to get some help and not feel as if they were alone in this. So did that kind of answer the question?
Joyce, man, listen, that did a whole lot more than just answer the question. You gave us a profound insight into your story, into who you are, and into how this amazing book first came to fruition. First and foremost, I wanna start by taking it back, right? And saying, and listen, I know you already know this. I know you've heard it. I mentioned it to you on the pre-screening call, but I'm gonna say it again. I am deeply sorry for the pain that you experienced. And I want you to know that your survival is nothing short of incredible. What happened to you is something that should never happen to anyone. You are a survivor. You are a person of distinction. You have shown that you have the power to reclaim your life, and your journey has showcased that. And I'm telling you, man, your words are going to inspire so many. Understand you are not alone. You have so many people supporting you. We are supporting you here through People of Distinction and through our network. And, you mentioned something a number of times with regards to the education system and the lack of support that is shown there. And it is something that I personally find infuriating. I can't remember the exact statistics, so I'm not even going to try to embellish by saying, well, people look it up. The numbers are not hard to find in terms of how likely you are as a young black man to be imprisoned, how likely you are as a Latino individual to be imprisoned as a white individual. There is, of course, a huge disparity, but the biggest point here with regards to all of it is that the numbers are astronomical. And the fact that we know the numbers are so high that we would have an education system that is still lacking the infrastructure to be able to tackle this situation, to be able to properly educate and care for these individuals is something alarming, and something, as I mentioned, is just absolutely infuriating. As a black man myself, raised in this country, it is something that I am very passionate about, and something that really, it bothers me to hear your story in certain aspects of it, because I look at it and I'm like, this is so unnecessary. These are things that we can lay down the proper infrastructure to make sure that these children are cared for properly. And the fact that they aren't is something truly alarming. And listen, that's leading into another conversation that I would love to go into with you. But this is not about me, okay? So I'm gonna stop myself before I start to really go on this tangent, because listen, I as I mentioned, there are a lot of prejudices, there are a lot of barriers in place to restrict progress. And that is something, like I mentioned, I would absolutely love to have a conversation with you about at a future date. But Joyce, rather than diving down that rabbit hole, we're gonna switch gears here, okay? People, remember, it's written there on the screen, man. It's been there this entire time. The book is called L.O.R.T.E, Levels of Response to Traumatic Events. Remember to get the second edition, right? You're gonna want to grab the latest edition that is available. This is one you cannot pass up. You can't afford to pass up. Her words need to be heard. And while you're at it, make sure to be on the lookout for her next book, her memoir, which is soon to be released. Make sure to check out her personal site, daylilyhealth.org, to gather more information and utilize it for the resource that it is. I'm just going to say it once again. Remember, the books aren't available there, but the information found is second to none. Check it out. Joyce, my follow-up question now that I want to transition to and go into. So listen, we followed your journey. We've now gotten to the precipice of your amazing book. Well, I'm curious to know, how can parents, how can educators specifically utilize your book to help children deal with such monumental circumstances?
Oh my goodness. All they need to do is get the book. If they get the book and start to read, they will understand the model. They will understand that children are going to visit four stages. But each stage has a number of steps or a number of concrete things that are going to happen, which will change a child's life. For instance, the first step I call the event or stimulus, and that is where all the concrete things happen to a child whose parent goes to prison. There's a physical separation. There is a sense of abandonment. There's the shame, the humiliation. There is the guilt. There is this sense of responsibility that I could have done something. I knew something was going on, but I should have been able to do something to keep my mother from going to prison. Nothing they could have done. Then there are, issues of detachment. Now, these are all things that happen in the abstract, in the consciousness, and they don't know what to do. They know that their life is about to change, but they don't know how it's going to change. I'm sorry. These are the things that happen at the concrete level. Everything that they know changes. Their life changes. So when you look at the four stages, the suppression, which is now we're talking about things that happen in the abstract, the hurt, the pain, the fear, the grief, the loss, the loneliness, the hopelessness, the loss of identity. These are things that happen. And what people should understand is that whenever there is a severe change like this in the heart and the mind, there is also going to be a change in behavior. So what L.O.R.T.E does is they can look at the model, level 3 aggression. Now the anger is suppressed. Now they're ready to blame somebody else because they know that it wasn't their fault. Mm-hmm. They feel victimized. And these kids are depressed. And it's a kind of depression that maybe they can't explain, but it's a kind where you'll ask a kid, what's the matter? And they'll say, nothing. And you'll say, no, I know something's the matter with you. They'll say, I don't know. And they don't know. They don't, because there is such a plethora of feelings going on that they just can't reach down and pull one up and look at it and say, put a label on it and say, oh, this is it. They can't. They don't know what it is. And so it just builds in them. And then they move from level 3, aggression, to becoming the aggressor. The acting out, the incorrigibility, the lack of respect for authority. They now become the victimizer. There's a lot of gang involvement. Why? Because in most cases, these kids are looking for their own community now. They're looking for people who will accept them for who they are. People like themselves who, aren't going to judge them. They don't know what to do. And so they are out there by themselves. And once they get through level 4 and become that aggressive, usually the next thing is detention or prison. And that's what we want people to use L.O.R.T.E for, and that is, 1, to keep these children out of prison, and 2, we've got to do something about this intergenerational incarceration. Too many of these kids, going to prison has gotten to be too commonplace for a lot of our children because so many of their family members have been in prison. They just think that ultimately they're going to show up there too. And so we have to be able to change that mindset. And the book will allow people, professionals, family members, even prisoners, anybody who gets their hand on this book, if you are working with a child who is experiencing the trauma of having a parent in prison and you don't know what to do, the model will show you. You can find out where they are in the model and say, okay, this looks like suppressed anger. Let me look over here in the suppressed anger chapter and see what that means. And let me see if it looks familiar, if the behavior of my child matches what's going on in this description about suppressed anger. So not only is it you can use L.O.R.T.E for both intervention and prevention. And it's also a model that you can incorporate with a program that you may already be working, or it's a model that can stand on its own. So, yes, go get the book, look in there, find out what's going on with these children, and get them the help they need based on where they are. So, hope that's helpful a little bit.
Joyce, that is an incredible, and listen, it brings up a point that I want to make again. And girl, man, listen, I'm grappling here with trying not to dive down this rabbit hole. But you mentioned something crucial a moment ago. You mentioned how prison has become so normalized. People almost expect to be imprisoned. And I mentioned before how rampant it is with regards to certain communities and people. Listen, research has been done, and I get it. It's not so black and white, right? There are a lot of areas of gray. There are a lot of extenuating circumstances to it all, but the statistics will lean towards this, right? Prison systems have not proven to be effective when it comes to rehabilitation. When you look at the way prison systems are created and managed, especially here in the United States, they focus more on punishment rather than rehabilitation. Not only is that an issue in and of itself, but then you create and you change an individual, you change their psyche so that when they finally are released, when they're put back out into the world, man, listen, they're dealing with circumstances that are completely out of the norm. It's foreign to them. And then you see this vicious cycle of them recommitting crimes. And it is vicious. It is a vicious cycle. And Joyce, I'm telling you, I would love to have a future conversation, a future discussion with you, because this is something that is so in depth. It is so layered. It's so nuanced. It requires a much deeper discussion. So today is not the day to go into it, but we can talk so long just about the prison system itself. My goodness, keeping it moving here. Joyce, my final question for you. We've spoken about the children, and rightfully so, because that is who your book is geared towards. But something that I recognize about your book is that there are notions that are beneficial to all ages. Joyce, what you've discussed here, I think, can be beneficial to so many. So I want to ask, what advice would you give to parents who are currently facing incarceration in terms of maintaining a connection with their children while they are imprisoned?
Oh, what an amazing question. Oh my goodness. You probably have no idea of this. Because I was in prison in Michigan, they wouldn't let me come in their prisons and help or do anything. So I was at a conference. I was presenting, I think, in Nashville, and the director of programming for the Rhode Island Department of Corrections was there, and he said, "This is a cutting-edge program." I talked about L.O.R.T.E. And I got with him, and we created a program for the men in prison, and whereby the men could work with their children on this program, going through the model. We created the workbooks, we created the facilitator's manual, we created the entire thing. And it was just such an amazing, it was just an amazing experience. They told me that it was the only program in the men's prison, where there's always a waiting list. The program still goes on today.
Wow.
So, yes. So incarcerated fathers work with their children on the L.O.R.T.E. program. Kids get to ask questions. The dads get to talk to them about all these steps and how to keep them out of prison. It's just an amazing thing. And I think that, I know, particularly with people who are incarcerated, they should go to Amazon too and buy this book, so they will know exactly what's going on with their children. So they will know. When a child comes to visit a parent in prison, this is one thing people need to know. That prisoner is staring accountability in the face. And so a person in prison can do a lot more than apologize and make these promises about what's going to happen when I get home. When I get home, I promise you this. When I get home, I promise you that. No. Let's go through this program together. Let me learn, and let me work with my child while they are learning as well, because I need to know where they are. I need to care more about what's happening with me in here, and I need to try and do what I can to help my child. And I think going through the program, with these, with the children, I think will probably, so much better than, sending them a little something here and sending them a little money there.
Mm-hmm.
No, invest in your child's life and their future. So that's what I want them to do. I want every prisoner in the United States to go to Amazon or wherever and buy the book and help save your child's future. Because, oh my goodness, I had one kid who went to jail in Ohio, just kept cutting up. He went to prison. He ended up in prison in Ohio. And to make a long story short, the judge found out that the kid found his way to prison just because he wanted to be with his daddy. That is not the way. That is not. We need help, Benjie. We need things to change. Mm-hmm. These children are important, and they matter.
Well, Joyce, listen. This is a long discussion. There is a long road ahead. And the systems that need to be changed, man, there's a lot of them. We're starting with this one, but my goodness, is it a huge one. I love so much your book, the message that is relayed, but one of the most powerful messages that I'm taking is this underlying message of power being within us. And people, listen, I know that she just mentioned that this is a book specific for prisoners to pick up. And I agree, but I'm going to take it a step further. It is for every single person listening in right now. You all need to head on over and pick up your copies of this book because, listen, there is a lot more work that needs to be done. This is a phenomenal start to the journey. It's Amazon, it's Barnes & Noble. Check out her personal site, daylilyhealth.org. Remember, this book, her future memoir, it's not available through the website. But you're going to get so many wonderful pieces of information through the site as well. Pick up your copies today and really let's get started. Let's start to chip away at the mountain of work that we have ahead of us. Because this book is the start to doing just that. Joyce, this has been a pleasure. Such an honor to have you here with us. I just want to, listen, man, I got to thank you once again for the amazing words of wisdom and for sharing your magnificent journey. And once again, thank you for being a guest here with us through People of Distinction.
Thank you so much. It's been such an honor. Such an honor. Thank you. I love you too, by the way.